Welcome to Wild Jobs with Steve's Restorations and Hot Rods. On this episode, we're going to show you how we painted this blue stripe up the center of this very rare deluxe edition Arnolt Bristol. Wild Jobs is one of the 5 parts of the Wild series, a series that we're bringing to you to help you become the best version of yourself. This episode of Wild Jobs is a very special episode for us. Not only is it the first episode of Wild Jobs, but the story behind this car is the story of a man named Wacky Arnolt, who lived his life on his own terms, and it was nothing short of a wild ride. As a matter of fact, when he came into town, Chicago, in 1938, he didn't just ride in like anybody else. He floated in on a 13-foot canoe that he bolted an engine to. Not only did he make a statement by doing that and people started calling him wacky, then he sold that engine to the U.S. Navy in World War II and made a fortune. He then dressed up like a Texas millionaire, went to Italy and used his fortune to make a deal to buy 200 car bodies and launch the Arnolt Car Company. Throughout the Wild series, you guys are going to meet some of the most inspiring and incredible people in the world who I've been blessed to become friends with. Well, one of the top people on that list is here today. He's my client who actually owns this Arnolt Bristol and a couple other ones. He knows way more about them than I do, so we're going to talk to him a little bit about this car. Everybody, meet my great friend, Alan Rosenblum.
Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Great
Alan,
to be here.
Thanks for letting us do this project for us.
Super.
Yeah. So I'd love to tell the world a little bit about Arnolt Bristol, and I'm not the expert on it. You are. So.
He was a very unique individual. He always wanted to build race cars. And when he went to Turin, Italy, he negotiated a deal with Bertone Body Works.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were not doing so well, so they had extra production time.
Right.
So Wacky actually went up to Bertone and said, I would like to buy 200 bodies. And that's what you see on the body of this car today, the hip-type fenders and the recessed grille and the lights. And then he went to England and he purchased 200 chassis from a manufacturer in England.
Bristol? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he sent those over to Italy.
Right.
And the body was placed on that chassis.
Yeah.
And then all the 200 cars were shipped back to Chicago, Illinois.
Could you imagine being, alive in the early 50s and saying, I want to build a race car, let me buy 200 cars?
That's why they called him Wacky Arnolt.
Right.
Most car manufacturers had a lot of money behind them.
Yeah.
And he was an individual that just wanted to make his own car his own way.
Yeah.
And that's why this car is so unique in the features. It's just the way the air flows up through the fenders and over the back. And it's a blast to drive. I mean, when you actually get into higher RPMs, starting at around 4,000 RPMs, that's when you really pick up the power in this car.
That's pretty awesome. Cool. Well, Alan, thank you so much for letting us do the project, and thanks for talking a little bit about it, and can't wait to introduce you properly to the rest of the world here on the Wild People Podcast.
All right, thank you, Steve.
Thank you. All right, see ya. We're going to keep telling you guys all these inspiring and exciting stories in the Wild series. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet, because it's going to hopefully change your life and help you guys create your own story and live your wild ride to the best of your ability. But Wild Jobs is all about showing you guys the process of how we create some of the coolest projects on the planet. That being said, let's stop messing around, get in the shop, and show you guys how we painted this stripe. So we're getting ready to tape the stripes out on the Arnolt Bristol, so then we can sand in between them, lay out our whole design, and get ready to start painting. But before we do that, we go over the whole car with a wax and grease remover. This is PPG's SX330 by One Choice PPG. So that takes off any contaminants from people's fingerprints that have been on there. There's oils that come out of your skin, wax, Armor All, whatever they use to detail this car. So after we do that, we're going to go through and start masking off the outside edges of the stripe. So what we did a couple days ago, we made a spray out. Now this panel is actually the exact dimension of our stripe, same color that we're going to use. It starts off narrow and it gets wide, but the wide part in the back of it is what will be the width of the stripe carrying through the whole car. So We got a couple things that we're going to use to do that. Got our Lucky ruler here, got our regular yardstick, tape measure, brand new razor blades to cut the tape. Got all different sizes of fine line tape, and we've got some 3/4 and 1.5 inch masking tape too. And we're going to use these as guides for us because you can lay down a really nice straight line with these and then follow up next to them with the fine line. And you want to use the fine line because it will cut a much cleaner edge on our stripe. We won't have that rough looking edge that you would from a regular masking tape. So that's why we're going to use the fine line. Then we'll go around, mask the whole car off, sand inside of our stripes, and give it one more final cleaning before we spray. So our stripe is going to go right through the dash. So George has removed all the bezels, the windshield, the mirror, all that chrome trim is taken off, the emblems on the back, the trunk latch, everything's been removed. But as we take it apart, everything is documented very well. We take pictures and videos of it, and we use the bag system like you've seen in some of our other projects, or you will see when you watch some of the other Wild Jobs episodes. So you got your trunk latch, your dash pieces. Now, the really neat thing here, the way that George did this was pretty smart. There's 7 pieces that go on the dash all together. So he numbered each one of them. All the switches underneath the dash have masking tape with numbers on them. And then he also put tape on each hole with the numbers, took a picture of it so that when we come back down the road to put this thing together after the stripes painted, we got number 1, number 2, all the way to number 7, and it's very self-explanatory. Now, some of these bezels had a slot on each side. So George actually made this tool, pretty awesome. Basically it's just 2 pegs coming off of it that sit inside of the grooves, and you can actually just unscrew it like that. Bag system inside the bin, and then we've got carpeted shelves for all of our, chrome and finished parts. So you got, like I said, everything is labeled, numbered. The windshield's laying on a nice piece of carpet, so it's not going to get damaged. And this shelf is designated specifically for the Arnolt Bristol project. That's where we're at. Time to start taping stripes, get some paint on this thing. Use the 3/4 inch or the 1.5 inch, even 2 inch masking tape as a guide because you're going to get a lot straighter line. So a car like this, we're following the body line of this scoop, which this is a handmade panel on a handmade car. So the body line is not going to be 100% perfect. So it's really tricky to find that fine line in between and create that optical illusion of a perfectly straight line on the pinstripe. So we're using the 3/4 inch tape as a guideline, and I can eyeball that out and get a straight line to where I like it, and then I can follow along that with the fine line and then peel off the 3/4 inch tape afterwards, and this will be the area that we're going to be doing our painting. And then we'll actually put regular masking tape on the outside of it and cover that up with paper when we're all done with our stripe work. So that's basically the process that we're using here. After we finished all of our fine line tape work to lay down the stripe design, George came in with 320 and 600 grit sandpaper consecutively to level out the surface and prepare the surface for our paint work. If you want to do great paint work, the key is in prep work. You have to prepare the surface the way that you intend the paint to lay down. The better you do here, the better your paint job's going to come out. After that was done, then we finished cleaning the surface one more time, masked off the car, got it in the booth, ready to spray. It's like 9 o'clock at night, and I'm getting ready to spray the stripes finally. So just rechecked everything, cleaned it one more time. Everything is looking super clean and perfect. So now I'm going to get painting. So rock and roll. Got the stripes all painted. after I did like a quick bake cycle. It was about 10 minutes at 125 degrees, so it wasn't a full bake, just to get it semi-cured. And then we went around and untaped. Lines came out really, really nice. Tomorrow we're gonna wet sand and buff it, so I'm leaving the majority of the car masked off so that we don't get buffing compound and sanding dust all over the car. Oh yeah. Everybody on the way? After we rolled the car out of the booth, we got to work sanding and buffing the stripe. Now our objective with this sanding and buffing process was just to blend the existing paint into the new stripe a little bit. So after we were done 2,000, 3,000, and then finally 5,000 grit sanding the stripe, we moved on to our cutting compound with a wool pad. After that was done, we finished it off with a swirl remover and then finally a wax. After that process was over, we got to assembling the car. Everything went very smooth for us assembling because we did a very good job taking it all apart. George took his time to number all the gauges and switches like we showed you earlier, and that helped everything go back together very smoothly. All right, so one of the last finishing touches we're putting on this Arnolt Bristol is a license plate bracket on the trunk that was never there. We were fortunate enough to have another one off of the same model Arnolt Bristol that we could use as a reference. So George fabricated this bracket and it is awesome, but the problem that we had now was the taillight piece that our client gave us had just regular hardware on it, just, you know, your typical grade 8 gold, you know, nut and washer. I found some acorn nuts in our hardware department over there and polished them up. So this is a little more period correct and kind of just, you know, it's going to give it a little bit better pizzazz when it's all said and done. So it's just attention to details, little things like that. After we got our bracket and light assembly ready to mount on the vehicle, it was time to drill some holes in the trunk lid. Typically, we probably would have done this before painting the stripe, but this was an afterthought. We decided that we were going to put it on afterwards, and that's okay. You just have to then be very careful not to screw up the paintwork. So we used a center punch to mark the holes where our drill bit was going to actually sit so that the bit would not slip as we were drilling. We used 1.5 inch masking tape to lay down on the panel so we could mark all of our areas where the holes would go so that we would have no question where it was going to go. Afterwards, once the holes were drilled, we filled them in with paint around the edges so there'd be no bare metal exposed, and then George and I bolted that thing on. One of the most important parts to a restoration project for me is looking over the before and after pictures and reminding myself of what we accomplished on that job. It's always a good thing to give yourself a little bit of a reward at the end and feel that sense of victory, because that reminds you that winning and accomplishing a job is a good feeling, and it'll make you want to do it again on the next project, which is always the most important project. Thank you for watching the first episode of Wild Jobs. I hope you loved it, hope you learned a little something, and I hope you're excited for the rest of the Wild series. You want to help us support the show? Make sure to check out all of our WildRide clothing and merchandise on the Steve's Restorations and Hot Rods website. I'd really appreciate that. The Wild series is going to really change the world. We hope to inspire a lot of people and help you become the best version of yourselves. So stay tuned. Thanks again, guys. Get out there, live your wild ride. See you on the next one.